Building Fortunes Radio with your host, motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Be sure to check out Greg at www.gregdwyer.com. That's www.gregdwyer.com. Now on to our show. Take it away, Greg.
I have no idea which month you're watching this in or what year you're watching this in or hearing this episode, but right now it's July 2023. I just can't believe it. I cannot believe that 6 months has gone by. It just seems like yesterday we were talking about New Year's Eve resolutions. It was January, it was cold here in Connecticut. Valentine's Day in February, and we're talking about the fact that most people have dropped off as far as their New Year's resolutions. And I've said this a million times, and I'll say it again. It's easy. It really is easy for people to get focused. Very few people stay focused, and that's what this episode is all about. We're going to talk about decide. And we did this through 12 weeks, starting in January of the beginning of the year, and we're starting again because it is evolving as you are evolving and I am evolving, and we just have to just look at this over and over again. So today we're going to talk about the topic of decide. Now, I said this last time when we did this, when you ask people what do they want, decide what you want, most people, they just don't know. Like, I don't know what I want. You know, that usually is the thing that people say. It's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. So I started with this diamond mind with D as in decide, with the concept of decide where you are in your life. Where you are with your health, your finances, your relationships, your career, all of those categories. However, I've had some time to think about this. And what I'm thinking is this. Before you decide what you want to decide where you are. But what if we were to pull back the lens even further and look at the big picture? In other words, what if I were to ask the question, decide how you see the world first? In other words, do you see the world as a happy place or a place of pain and misery? How do you view the world? I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about this with my dad, who passed away a few years back. But when I would ask him, you know, Dad, how do you see things? He would say, this world is hell. And there was a reason why I think he said that. He grew up in the Depression. His mom died when he was 5. His wife died when they were married. His son died, you know, shortly after that. And my father retired, and I think he had a great life in retirement. But when I asked him how he saw life, it was kind of like purgatory, or it was kind of like hell. Because I would ask him, you know, do you believe in life after death? And he says, well, I believe this is hell. So the reason I bring this up is I really think how we see the world impacts how we live out our life. Like, okay, it's important to decide what you want. It's also important to decide where you are in your life. But I think it's equally important to decide your metaphor for life, how you see the world. In other words, somebody might say, okay, this world is like hell, or this world is like a baseball game, right? That's a metaphor. So as I've been thinking about this, my metaphor, well, I actually have three. I have three metaphors. The first one is I see the world as a game. And then I also see the world as a journey. And I also see the world as a stage, those three things. And I thought, well, maybe I need to pick one. Well, I don't think so. I don't really think I need to pick one because I think they all tie together. Years ago, this is back in the 70s when I got involved with magic. I would do card tricks. And I would say to some of my friends, you know, the reason why I'm able to fool people with these card tricks, and the one I'm thinking about is we have 2 red cards and a black card. You have 3 cards and you're throwing them around and the person has to pick the one that's the odd one. And 3-card monte, that's what they call it. You used to see it in New York. I don't know if they do it anymore. You also see it in Boston where they'll take a cardboard box And they'll set it up and they'll have 2 red cards and a black card, and they'll start throwing the cards around on the box, which was a table. And then people would gather, 10, 15, 20 people. And then people will start betting their money, and eventually they lose. I think the last time I saw this, I was in Boston. I think it was Boston Commons. And I saw the person, throwing the cards, and I also saw the person that was working with them. So this is what I would say to my friend back in 5th grade, 6th grade. Never, ever, ever play another man's game, And the guy I'm thinking about, his name is Gene. And he go, yeah, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, look, if someone invites you to a card game, like 3-card monte, don't play his game. Because if it's his game, he's going to win, So anyway, the way it works is it's a trick. There's a little bit of sleight of hand, and the person that brings you into the game also is working with someone that's in on it. So they'll be throwing the cards around, and the guy to the left of them is winning. And you're like, well, if this idiot can win, I can win too, And so greed takes over. And then you start betting your money, and that's when you lose. So my motto is never, ever, 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 ever play another man's game. Because if you play another man's game, most likely you are going to lose, because they're going to set you up. And then my second rule is, if you have to play another man's game, don't take it seriously. Just don't take it seriously. And what I mean by that is this. We come into the world, we're given a name, and we're given a social security number, right? And we're also told to play this game, which is life. Which is, you grow up with your parents, hopefully, and then you go to school, maybe you get married, you maybe start a career first, then get married, then you buy a house. All of these things that most people do in life. Society pretty much enforces this is how you live your life. Like right now, if I were to sell my house and get rid of all my possessions and just travel the world, some of my family and friends would probably scratch their head and say, Greg's lost it, he's crazy. So there's this pattern or this game that's set up before we get here. And for me, it was going to kindergarten. It's like, okay, you got to leave home, got to go to kindergarten. We're going to teach you how to add and how to subtract and how to obey and sit down and do the right thing. And they're kind of like grooming us for society, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But what I am saying, and please listen to me carefully, it's another man's game. You're playing another man's game. You're actually being invited into a program. Here's your social security number. Here's your tax ID. Here's your funny money, $100, $1,000, whatever it is. Here's your career path. You sit down with the guidance counselor. I don't know if I ever did that, but I guess they didn't know what to tell me. But you know what I mean? It's like you go in and it's like you're going to take your SATs, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a degree, and you're going to get a career. I mean, look at it. I mean, just look at it as a game, but look at it as another person's game that they're kind of offering to us. Now, some people, they say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do my own thing. I have a lot of people in my family, they're electricians, or, they work in the trade, so they didn't do the college thing, they didn't get into debt. But you think about it, when you grow up and you get out of high school and you go to college and you get all of that debt, and then you fall in love, and then you start a career, and then you buy a house, it's very, 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 very difficult to get out of that, right? In fact, the word mortgage means death pledge. It literally means you're pledging your whole life away. You're never going to pay that $1 million back, or the $750,000 house you bought. Plus, I was talking to my sister the other day. She was talking about one of her sons, how he still has a college loan. And I'm like, okay, never, ever, ever, ever play another man's game. And if you have to, don't take it seriously. So that's my first metaphor for life. My metaphor for life, number one, and this is just a decision that I've made. I mean, you could talk me out of it, right? You might have a better one. Send me an email at greg@gregdwyer.com and say, hey, I got a better metaphor for you. I'd love to hear what you have to think. But the metaphor that I have first and foremost is life is a game. It's a game, you know? It's like Monopoly. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes you land on something that's really good, sometimes you land on something that's not good, right? And that's life. It's a game. It's Wheel of Fortune. It's Wheel of Fortune. You know, if you've ever seen the Wheel of Fortune, I'm not talking about the television show, I'm talking about the tarot card. Sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down, you know? Frank Sinatra, I think he sung a song about it, right? So it's this idea in my mind, because I'm deciding here how I'm seeing the world. Not necessarily am I deciding what I want out of the world, not am I really deciding where I am, I'm deciding the bigger picture. This whole thing is just a game. Now some people would say, the world is a matrix. That's another way of looking at it. It's not real, it's an illusion. The whole thing, a friend of mine said to me the other day, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, merrily. Life is but a dream. So there's a metaphor. So, you know, you wake up one day and, right? So that's a metaphor. I haven't really adopted that in the series, but I may do that, right? So the first step is never, ever, 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 don't ever do this, folks. I'm warning you. If you're in, you know, DC or Boston or New York City and you see a guy with 3 cards, 2 of them are red and 1 of them black, and they're throwing around the box of, you know, cardboard, and they're saying, come on, you know, guess where that, don't play it. However, if you have to play it, if you have to get a social security number, if you have to go to work, if you have to get a job, if you have to play with the money, you have to invest, just don't take it seriously. Don't take it seriously. It's just a game. So that's the way I see it. I'm not saying you have to see it that way. You might want to take that on. You might decide, hey, I like that. I like that metaphor. Or you might say, that's crazy. Greg's off his rocker. I think life is, and then you know, like my dad, life is hell. I mean, that's literally what my father said, and he believed it. He went through the Depression. He saw his wife die. He saw his son die. He wasn't raised by his mom, and my dad, God bless him, he was a tough guy, but when you asked him what life was like, life was hell. Right? I don't see life as hell at all. I see life as a game. Okay, enough of that. The second thing that I have decided, and maybe you will decide to adopt this or maybe not, is that life is a journey. You know, I'm in my 60s now. Life is different in my 60s than it was in my 30s and in my 20s. So I take people all over the world. I've been doing this since 2009. I've been all over Europe. I love to travel, and I love to come home, right? But what I love about it is that when you travel, and we just got back from Ireland, we're planning to go to Scotland next year, is there's always a beginning to the trip. The beginning of the trip is the excitement, the packing of the bag, right? And then you go, and then halfway through the trip, you're halfway through the trip, and then at the end of the trip is over. It's basically, you know, Rick Steves, if you've ever listened to Rick Steves, he says travel is intensified living. Spot on, spot on. In other words, you're going to the Middle East, you're going to Jerusalem, you're going to Egypt, you're going to Scotland, you're going to be there for a week or two. It is a metaphor for life. It really is. You have to decide what you're going to pack. You're going to have to decide what's important to you. Like, do you just want to taste the food? Do you just want to go souvenir shopping? Do you want to go to pray? You want to see holy sites? What is it about this trip that has attracted you, and why do you want to go, and what you're going to do? So I have to laugh. My last trip was Ireland, April, right? We had like 50 people on the trip. For me, I visited every single bookshop that I could. I came back with, I think, I'm looking at them over there, I think I came back with like 15, 20 books. I'm embarrassed to say it. But what I did is, every time we stopped at a city or a town, I went into the town in the bookstores and I went shopping. Sometimes I picked up a book, sometimes I picked up 2 books, and I picked up books that I wouldn't get here in the United States. These were books that are in Europe, that are in Ireland, and so when I unpacked my suitcase, I had a whole stack of books. You know, there are other people on the trip, they went for a Guinness. You know, they went to see certain sites. Life, for me, is a game, but it's also a journey. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end, right? What's important to you? What do you value? Because life does not last forever, at least on this plane, that I can imagine. I was talking to a friend the other day about a movie called Tuck Everlasting. I think it's a book, but I saw it years ago when I was a teacher in a school, and it's about this guy who lives forever. He just lives forever. And he's like, I found the fountain of youth. I'm so happy. I drank it. I'm going to live forever. He was miserable. He was so miserable because everybody around him died. You know, after 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, he wanted to put a, you know, he couldn't because he had everlasting life. And so the thing that he wanted the most was the thing that he hated the most. I tell you, I've been traveling since 2009, and when I'm a day away from coming home, I just can't wait to get home. I sit there in the hotel room and I'm like, I can't wait. I wish we were leaving now. Like, I came, I conquered, I delivered, I did what I wanted to do. I want to go home, and I want to go home now. And I think when it comes to life, there's a beginning, middle, and end. You know, in your 20s, in the springtime of your life, you don't know what you're doing. You know, you're the fool, the tarot card of the fool walking off the cliff. You think you're going to change the world. You think you know how the world is going to be. The springtime of life is fun because, you know, everything is sheltered for you. Your parents are taking care of you. You don't have a mortgage. You don't have a loan and all these kind of crazy things that go on. And then you move into the summer of your life. Like right now, it's July. It's humid. It's hot. It's uncomfortable. The summer of a person's life is test. It's a test. You know, are you going to be able to, you know, keep the marriage together and the finances together and the family together and find that house and all of those things? You know, summer's not easy. And then, of course, there's the fall. I'm in the fall of my life still. I'm still in my early 60s. But then once you get into your 63, 4, and 5, you move into the winter of your life, where it's about the wisdom that you pass on to other people. So my point is this. Before you decide where you are or what you want, decide how you see the world. If you see the world as hell, like my dad did, there's a good chance you're probably not going to accomplish much other than to suffer, really, other than to suffer. So decide how you see the world. I see it as a game. I don't take it that seriously. I really try not to. And I also see it as a journey. There's a beginning, springtime. You move into summer, move into fall, move into winter. It's time to go home. It's time to go home. All right, so what's my other metaphor? Well, before I get into that, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to pause for a commercial and take a sip of water. We'll be right back.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Do you wish you could sharpen your focus on what matters most to you and achieve more? Then you owe it to yourself to read Greg's ebook at gregdwyerebook.com. That's www.gregdwyerebook.com. Download it today and give it away. As always, we want to thank you for listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio with motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Now back to our show. Take it away, Greg.
Okay, we are back. We're talking about the word decide in the letter, or I should say, in the letter D for diamond. We're looking at decide. So decide, most people, what do you want? What do you want? Well, most people can't do that. Then we say, okay, that's fine. Decide where you are right now. That's probably better. But as I step back and look at this, we all have metaphors for life. You know, these are like the meta pattern. You know, I see the world as a safe place. I see the world as a dangerous place. I see the world as a jungle. That is going to impact what you do and what you don't do. So this is the reason why I'm stepping back and saying, let's decide what your metaphor is. And I'm just giving you mine. I'm not saying you have to adopt them. I'm not saying, you know, this is a cult and you have to do what I'm saying. But how do you see the world? How do you view the world? Decide, you know, reflect, figure it out. So for me, it's a game. I don't take it that seriously most of the time. It's a journey. I really see it as a journey. And last, I see it as a stage. You know, I've been a showman most of my life, many years. And all I can tell you is this is not original. Life is a stage. But here's what I'm thinking. You, my friend, are the star of your own show. You really are. If you think you're an extra and you don't matter, that's going to impact what you do. If you think that you're just an extra and that nothing really matters and you're not going to impact anyone, and you see yourself that way, that is going to impact how you live out your life. So what I'm suggesting, in addition to a game, in addition to a journey, I'm suggesting life is a stage and you are the main actor. Not me, you. You're the star. You're the star of your own show. And I really think everybody feels this way deep down inside. Everybody is thinking it's all about me, you know, and everybody else is an extra in my play. And I think that's the reason why there's a lot of conflict in the world. But follow my logic here. The idea is you are center stage. And there are many people that are going to come into your life over the journey of your life. The spring, the summer, the fall and winter of your life, right? Some people are going to come and stay. It's not going to be the majority. You know, I remember when I was a kid, and I think I read this the other day, when we are in the spring of our life, we're, 19, 20, and we meet somebody in high school, we think, this is the one that's going to be with me. It's very rare, very rare. In fact, I have a classmate, his name is Tom, in high school. We graduated in the 80s, and I think he's still with his wife, and she was his high school, not college, high school sweetheart. It's really rare to meet somebody in high school and just travel with them, into your 50s and 60s, 70s, and 80s. So my point is, just like any other play, you got a lot of people coming on stage and saying their lines and then they walk off. They have a lesson to teach you. Maybe there's a villain in your play, which I think for most of us, we need one. We need a villain. If you saw that movie, I guess it was a Peter Pan movie, but it was the backstory. I can't remember the title of it after. I think it was called, I don't know. I'll Google it and figure it out, or you can Google it. But it's this idea that Hook was the enemy, but in a sense, he was part of the shadow of Pan, and he was there to teach him something. I think it was called Neverland. Yeah, I think it was called Neverland. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But in any good movie, it doesn't matter who it is, there is an enemy in the play. There's an enemy in the movie. I mean, can you imagine, you're going to the movies and you sit down and it's this guy who, comes home and kisses his wife, kisses the kids, puts them to bed, gets up, goes to work the next day, and it's just, nothing happens. Like after 10, 15 minutes, you'd be saying to yourself, what am I here for? This movie doesn't make any sense. The other day I went to see the new Indiana Jones movie, and right away there's conflict. Right away there's an enemy, right? So my point in saying this whole concept of stage is you're going to have someone that is going to attack you. You're going to have an enemy. And in a sense, it's a great story. It really is. I mean, I look back at my life and I'm in my 60s and I look at some of the people that really, challenged me or were in my way or caused me trouble. And today I laugh about it, right? So in any good play, in any good movie, you have to have someone that is going to attack you, right? So you're the main character. You're going to have a villain. Hopefully it's not you. Hopefully it's not you. Hopefully you're not the villain. But you're the star of the show. There's going to be villains that are going to come and go. There are going to be extras. There are going to be some people that are going to be co-stars. Maybe it's your husband, your wife, or your partner, or, your kids, your brother, your sister. I can count on one hand, maybe two. I don't know. I don't want to get personal, but it's not a lot. It's not a lot of people. You have a lot of acquaintances, you have a lot of people that come and go, and today with social media, nothing means nothing. Friends, I got 5,000 friends on social media. I don't know half of them. I don't even know 3/4 of them. And I have no idea how many people will be at my funeral. And you know what I mean? So you just have to look at it this way, or you have to look at it the way you want to look at it. And that's what I'm suggesting. These are just suggestions. I'm not saying that this is the way everything is. But if you want to know how I operate internally, how I see the world, before I decide what I want, before I decide where I am in my life, there's this unconscious pattern of how I see the world that if I'm not aware of it, it's just running me. But I am very aware of it. So if you were to ask me, I would say number one, don't ever play another man's game. But if you have to, don't take it seriously because it's just a game. It's like Wheel of Fortune. Number two, life is a journey. You know, how you see the world in your 20s is different than you see your world in your 40s, hopefully. Hopefully you're not repeating things over and over again. And when you get to your 60s, and I would assume 70s, 80s, and 90s, you see things totally different. You're ready to go home. That's what I think. I mean, I'm going to Scotland next year, and I haven't packed yet, but I know what the feeling's going to be like the day before we leave. I'm going to say, I can't wait to get back to JFK. That's how I'm going to feel. And then lastly, it's a stage. People are going to come and go. People are going to challenge you. People are going to be extras in your play. You're going to have a few people that are going to support you, but most people, you won't even remember. And neither will they ever remember you. So I hate to be depressing here, but that's how I see the world. And when we start with the word decide, it's your worldview. So as you're thinking about this, how do you see the world? Do you see it as a baseball game? Do you see it as hell? Do you see it as a dream? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. How do you see it? And if you say, I don't know how I see the world. Yeah, you do. It's just that you're not aware of it. Because you have to have some kind of image in your mind. The world is really hard, or the world is really great, or right? So I think it's important for you to decide how you see things, first of all. And then once you back up and see that, then you can decide where you are right now. I'm looking at the time, we got 2 minutes. So in 2 minutes, let me say this. Once you get down your metaphor, which mine, life is a game, life is a journey, life is a stage, you kind of put the pieces together and you realize not everybody thinks the same way, right? Not my sister, my brother, my family, they might not think this way, but I do. And then you say, hey, where am I? Where am I in my journey of life, right? Am I in spring? Am I in summer? Where am I? You know, winter, if I'm in my 70s, I'm in the winter of my life. You don't want to be doing things that you were doing, you know, in the spring of your life. It doesn't make any sense. And then you look at the game. You go, where am I in the game of life, as far as success, or, you know, my weight, or my health, or my finances, or my relationships? How are things being played out? Okay? And then lastly, recognize that you are the star of the show and that people are going to come and go. Some people are going to support you. And yes, you're going to have enemies. And those enemies, just like Peter Pan had Captain Hook. Cook, I don't know why. I'm probably because I'm hungry. Captain Hook was the enemy of Peter Pan, and it all worked out in the end. So, all right, so I hope I gave you something to think about. And just remember, anybody, most people, they get focused.
60 seconds.
It's not really difficult to get focused. Staying focused, that's where the real magic is. And staying focused really has to happen for you to achieve greatness, because it's so easy in this world to get distracted. So the first place to start when we're talking about Diamond Mind, the letter D, is to decide. Decide how you see the world. And until next time, stay focused. Can you imagine that? Bye everyone, we'll talk to you next week.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Check out Greg at gregdwyer.com. Be sure to download his ebook at gregdwyerebook.com.
10
Focus on what
seconds.
matters most to you. That's www.gregdwyerebook.com. We want to thank you for listening. Now go make a difference in your world.